So this webinar we filmed in March of 2025. So depending on when you're watching this replay, we're going to walk you throughout this hour exactly how to start getting listings on demand. That's the goal, is for you to be able to watch this and say, okay, here's how my business is set up, here's what I'm missing, and basically have a clear step of what's working, what's not working, and what do you need to do to fix it. That's what we want to do. So enjoy. If you have questions, put them in the comments below, and then stay tuned at the end so you know if you do want help implementing it, what the options are. But enjoy the webinar, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. People are coming in, so we're going to give it a minute, just let everyone funnel in here, and then we'll jump right into going. Well, we're just giving everyone a minute, just for my own curiosity. Put in the chat where you are. I'm curious kind of how far across we get everyone here. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. I see a bunch of names I recognize, which is good, and a lot that I don't. Mississauga, Montreal, Shelburne, Thornhill, Ottawa. Love it. Make sure you're setting to everyone instead of hosts and panelists so people can also see what you're saying. We have people all over Belleville, Toronto. Perfect. All right. All right, we got a pretty good group attending based on like normal metrics we see for how many people show up versus register. So we're going to jump right in because I believe in rewarding people who show up on time, and other people can just catch up when it's their turn. So what we're going to do today, so like we talked about, the main topic of today is getting listings on demand, because obviously you hear all the time you got a list to last, listings are leverage, all that fun stuff. But today the goal is actually to talk about how you go about getting it. So that's what we're going to walk. And then, of course, we are sending out the recording for anyone who needs it. So don't worry about that. You will get it if you can't stay for the whole time. So the first thing I was talking about when I get into this, though, and this is kind of one of the reasons we did it, and partially this slide is how I justify paying for a history degree when I clearly don't use it now. But in going back to, again, being a history nerd, I'm curious if anyone in the chat has heard of cargo cults. So a cargo cult back in World War II was, as the Americans were advancing towards Japan, they would go island to island and setting up supply runs, cargo place, like because they need the logistics to be able to advance on the island. And when they left, the indigenous tribes who before that had never really seen 20th century technology would try to mimic it. So like they between like with rocks and bamboo try to like build out the infrastructure they had with like the radio towers and runways and everything, trying to wait for these cargo planes to bring them what the people before had. And it never did, obviously, because they didn't understand the underlying technology of what actually made it all work. They could make it look like it, but not actually what made it work. And that's how most people market their business, is you kind of see what other people are doing, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to mimic how that looks. But you often don't actually might know like what are the pieces underneath that actually make this work. And so like ever since I got into the industry, like that's been like my goal, so I had to figure out all those pieces of like how does this all work together? How are we able to take this to get the results that we need? And that's kind of my goal today, because most people's marketing strategy is I'm just going to throw a bunch of crap at the wall, hope something sticks. And I mean, that's how when I started, it was like when I got my license, it was a lot of just go in and then start door knocking. No idea what I was going to say, no idea what I was going to do once someone said they were interested, outside of like, well, I'll figure it out at the door, which was not a great option. So a lot of it was just like, I don't know what worked, and okay, how can I figure that out? So over the years of being an agent myself, working with agents across North America, and kind of doing everything that we've done in the industry for the last 12, 13 years that I've been in it, is kind of putting all the pieces together of how do you consistently get listings and what actually kind of causes that when you do it. So to oversimplify, the secret to getting more listings is just to have more conversations. Like it's that every day is like what I would call my North Star metric, which is I know if I do have enough of these every single day, like if my goal is every day I want to have at least just 10 conversations with people, if I know I can always make that better, have more of them, other stuff will come. Now, you need the underlying pieces to gotta like drive it, and that's what we're gonna work towards with you today. But again, when we're oversimplifying a strategy, the goal here is to have as many conversations as possible every single day. And then as those conversations happen, you uncover opportunities, and that's the opportunities that turn into listings for you. And then obviously, because the beauty with having a listing is you're able to spin that off. So when we're looking at it, the first thing we always look like, if your goal is to be able to say, I want to be able to get listings on demand, because that's typically what everybody wants. And we typically, when we look at this, say there's three main things. So the first challenge when people want a listing on demand is that they have an inconsistent lead flow. And the only time I'll ever be compared to a doctor, my writing's kind of like that of a doctor. Um, and the other challenge is they have a hard time converting. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we'll get into more in depth. But that's the other one. Then the last one is just staying in touch without being annoying. So when we look at how do we get someone to kind of get to that point that they can have those listings as long as they're putting the work in, these are the three main challenges. And so if you can solve those challenges, obviously on this side you have great lead flow. And then over here, it's easy conversion because one of the things is like we see this all the time of people start getting leads in and like they can grind out the conversion side sometimes, like volume of calls and doing stuff like that. But it's not an easy process and it does very feel like a grind. And we want to get away from that kind of grind feeling and be like, okay, how can I set this up so that the conversions I'm doing are actually fairly simple? And then the last one is creating a lifetime client program. So something where once they do business with us once, we can almost always guarantee we're going to come back. And so that's kind of the main goal. So the way that we approach this is what are the components of these three if we had to do it? So when I'm looking at if I want to get great lead flow, how do we actually approach that? So the first thing is you need the right people. And this is essentially like your niche, right? Like I need to make sure I'm targeting the right group for me. You don't want to go super broad. You don't, because that'll make your marketing a lot less effective. So the first step of getting great lead flow is figuring out who are the right people for your business. And then you have to give them some very clear offers. Like this is a big mistake I made when I sold is like I'd knock on a door and just like introduce myself and say I was working in the area. I never actually like gave them something of value or had an offer for them to stay in touch with me for a very specific reason. So we look at you need some clear offers so that when you talk to the right people, you have offers that would be compelling to them. But that's why you want to do the right people first so you can actually understand who are they, what do they care about the most, and let's craft some offers that would get their contact information so they could become a lead. And then the last one here is content that connects. So content that connects is something that resonates with them. And we're going to go more into depth into each of these as we go through. But the idea here being if you have content that connects with people, that's going to get more people ultimately seeing these offers that you've created. And that's going to generate a pretty consistent lead flow for you. But if you're not creating that kind of content that connects with people and you have clear offers that you're now getting visibility on to the right people, then you're not going to have that consistent lead flow. So if you can nail these three, and we'll talk about how, you can really make sure that that side of the triangle is solved for you. Now, once you get onto the conversion side, this is where a lot of people struggle. So the first and most important one to me is what we call hand raisers. And basically, this is when you get a lead in, I want to get the ideal people to put up their hand and say, yes, I want to work with you. Because most leads, when you get them, and this is like when most people say like online leads are crap, like there's kind of two ways reasons for that. One is most people are expecting a prospect and they're getting a lead. A lead is just someone who has put up their hand and say, this topic interests me more. A prospect is someone who's moving, but maybe not with you yet. So a hand raiser is something in your conversion process, really simply, that gets the prospects to put up their hand to self-identify. And so you can even automate these to go out during the year that allows these prospects to put up their hand and identify themselves to you. So again, it makes your life a little bit easier. Then you need that long-term nurture piece. And this is one where we kind of see a lot of people not have a great system for. Is just something that whether you're going to be on the list for a month before you buy or 5 years from now, what is a really simple way to stay in touch with them? And that's where we want to make sure that you have something because there's like the leads who are ready now. Most people know how to handle that if someone puts up their hand and says, yeah, no, I'm ready to go. It's the okay, no, but like 2 years from now, I'll probably move. That's where most people don't have a system. So you got to make sure you have a system for that. And then the last one here on the conversion side is really simple, which is presentations that convert. So think of like your listing presentations, buyer presentation, that side of it. You need to have that as part of your conversion process. Now, who you are, your brand in the area you're in can change this part a lot, right? So if you are a brand new agent, it's going to take a little extra convincing of people at a presentation. Whereas, like, if you're the number one agent, everyone knows who you are in the area, you can often just like walk into a listing appointment, say, yeah, here's the contract, sign, let's go and be out the door in 5 minutes. If you're brand new, you're not going to be able to pull that off. So it's also understanding like where are the people in the process related to me and how can we make that work? And then, so this part here, we call the attract phase. So how do you attract as many leads as you can? And as you can imagine, we call this the convert phase. And then this last phase is engage. So to do the engagement side, I mean, the one that always matters the most is just 5-star service. If you're not providing great service, it basically everything else falls apart. Like you can get consistent leads, and but you're always gonna have to chase new business if your service sucks. And even that will get harder as word gets around that you don't provide a great service. So at the core of getting people to stick with you for a long time is they just have to have a good experience. And we'll show you kind of a really simple way to try to improve what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you have to have that because like even just to get more referrals, that like how you obviously treat the clients reflects on the person who referred you and they want to be confident you're going to make them look good. Then loyalty events. So traditionally this would be like um, your client events, things like that, but we'll talk about some kind of creative ways within that too. And then the final one is a VIP program, which we'll go into as well. But essentially, these kind of the 9 core components that if you can nail them all, that you're going to have that kind of consistent listings on demand piece. And this is what you need. If you can't get these points, so if you're looking at your business and you look at this, you want to think to yourself, okay, where are the gaps in my current one? What are these pieces that I don't have? And if you sit and think about that, and be like, okay, I might have the right people and some clear offers. I don't have content that connects, or you might have the right people and content that connects, but you're not making clear offers to them. And again, you need to have all three working in conjunction, or it's not going to work. And then the other piece with this is this system can work in a lot of different platforms. So, like for example, we do workshops once in a while on like Instagram. Really, what we're showing you is how to do this, but with Instagram. But it can work with YouTube, it can work with door knocking, cold calling. It's like you need all these pieces in place, and then it couldn't be done on different platforms and kind of the way that you want it to work for your business. But it's not exclusive to any one platform to make it work. So the attract phase is the first one. And this is where, again, getting that consistent lead flow. So when you're attracting the right people, really what we mean is you just need to niche down. The nice thing with niche is you don't have to like say, this is my niche today. and it's going to be my niche forever. You can change it as you grow, but again, going back to the idea of I need to justify my history degree sometimes. If we look back at like World War II when the Allies were invading Europe, like they had to establish a beachhead in Normandy so they could get kind of set up so that they could further go to the rest of Europe. If they tried to go all of Europe at once, it'd fall apart. Same when you get your real estate license. You need to get a foothold in and know that, okay, I'm going to consistently have business from this group to a point where, like, I know every year, roughly speaking, how much revenue I'm going to get from this group. That's my base. Then I can expand out from there. But you have to have that niche at the beginning, especially your brand gets to a point where everyone's coming to you just because you're the person in town. That takes time to get there. But if you're not like over 50 deals, that again, there's some variations here on like areas and things like that, but typically 30 to 50 deal range is when you can start talking about expanding outside of into like a new niche or a broader niche or something like that. But typically I would say 30 to up to 30, 50 is where you want to be really, really dialed in on that perfect niche for you. Then you can kind of look at kind of expanding out from there. But again, you don't have to be married to one. Like if you start working with one, you can change it. Now, one that we always look at when we're trying to pick one, the two main things to oversimplify it is one, they have the capacity to move, right? Like you might really like having a specific group that you work with, but if there are people who don't have the money or means to actually buy and sell real estate, it's not going to be the right niche. Typically, the other way I look at picking the right niche is just who are you, right? Like if I went back to sales, I would also look for people who have like young kids who kind of put them into sports and do things like that. If like they're in a similar place to me, because that's the easiest for me to relate to and create things that they'll relate to and I understand them better so I can provide better content. So the easiest way to do it is a group that you're really close with or in yourself, right? So like I know people who have like really gone through some things with like their parents, and then they felt like how they went downsizing their parents to a smaller place didn't go well. So they want to help people like that. That's fine. But you should understand the group that you're having this niche with really, really well. Like if you work with investors, you should be investing yourself. If you don't invest yourself, you shouldn't. Like there's an agent I worked with years ago, and it was a kind of a funny moment where um, I messaged him. He was in like an area that was people live there, they work there, they also buy recreational properties. And that's what he primarily sold was recreational. And I just because I knew him really well, I sent a message being like, "Hey, I'm looking at this commercial property there. You got any advice like about it?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, no, I'm a fund realtor. I don't work with that stuff. You'll have to find someone else." Like, but it was just very clear, like, this is my lane. I'm sticking in it. And I respect that quite a bit. Now, clear offers. So you got the right people. Now you got to think what resonates. And typically, how we look at that is you want one buyer offer and one seller offer. And you don't have to overcomplicate this, right? Like you can get creative with it. You can go in depth, and there's a lot of different types of offers you can make. But I often go back to like look at Mark Ferris, if you guys know who he is, who agent that does 1,000+ deals with his team up in like the Barrie, Simcoe area. And most of their offers are just get a free home evaluation, join our VIP buying program. They keep it simple. Like how I would probably do it is something like find out what your home is worth and get a list of homes. I'm going to narrow those down to what my ideal clients want and what resonates more with them. So, but I'm doing this in a way where I'm trying to get the people from my niche to want to give me their contact information for something that I have. And we always look at I want one buyer, one seller, so that they will always be able to take me up on something. Like you always want to have something you can offer someone. So like if you are going door knocking and someone reaches out to you, you're at like a cocktail party with friends and someone strikes up a conversation, you have a really easy reason to get their contact information that maybe isn't, okay, no, I'm ready to move. Let's chat. It's earlier in the process. Be like, oh, well, if you want, I can just, send you a report on a couple of the homes that have sold in your area. Flip me your email. I'll send you a list of them. Right. Like it's a very clear, you have a process set out and I'm going to get you there. So having two clear offers, one buyer, one seller, you need that. And then content that connects. This is probably where I find in this phase most people struggle is no one's ever going to see your offers typically unless you have content that connects with them. Now, you can obviously shortcut this by running paid ads and you can drive those ads in front of people and drive those offers in front of as many people as you want. But if you go with that route, you're never going to be able to turn off paying for them because you always have to get it in front of them that way. So content that connects is one of those things that can get your stuff in front of people, more people seeing your offers. And typically, if they're organic, they're going to be higher quality than paid. Not always the case, but typically we don't recommend always adding in paid until you kind of have this part nailed down because it should be more paid should be more like pouring gas on the fire than lighting the fire for you. So that's how we look at that. But content that connects, we look at four key content types that work on every platform. So the first is common questions. So when you're thinking of your niche, what are the most common questions that they have? Pretty straightforward. You're going to hear this stuff all the time. Like the example I always use when I sold, um, HGTV started talking about bully offers all the time back then, but it was a relatively new term. So a lot of people started Googling it. And I just created a blog post that's what is a bully offer? 500 to 1,000 people a week came to my site for that. And it was a really easy one to have. So just sit down, write what are all the most common questions? Anytime you need an idea, you go there. The next one is questions they should ask, but don't know to. So this is the other one. Like again, going back to when I got my license, I remember going through the courses and they're talking like if you're going to buy a cottage, you need to know about road shore allowances because it gives the town the right to build a road between the cottage and the lake. And if you don't know about that or know to ask about it, your cottage essentially gets ruined because you get a road now right through the middle of it. You need to ask about that. Most consumers have no idea to ask that question. And so this in content is where they really start to trust you because you're kind of letting them in on things that could save them a big headache later on. But how you present these types of content are going to be different. Like if it's a common question everyone has, like the bully offer one, all I have to say is, what is a bully offer? And then explain it. When it's questions they should ask but don't know to ask, sometimes I have to lead with like what the negative outcome that they might want to avoid is. So I'd be like, do you want to make sure when you buy a cottage, you're not buying one that ends up with a road between you and the water, cutting you off? Let's talk about road shore allowances. You have to make that little distinction because they don't have the awareness of it to just ask the question outright. So that's where we learn. Because if I just open and said like, what is a road shore allowance? Then it's not going to kind of mean as much to them and they're less likely to stay. But that's the second type. So we sit down and be like, oh, what are all the questions my niche should ask, but they're not? And we put that in there. Then the next one is what we call the aha moments. So aha moments are like when you're talking to someone and their eyes go wide, or they say, "Oh, that's a really good idea. That's really smart." This list usually is typically a lot shorter, but I know like if I'm doing a presentation like this in person, if I ever like make a point and I see people in the audience like they lean in or their eyes go wide, or they're like, "Oh," and then they start scribbling furiously, or on Zoom, I get everyone in the chat being like, "Yes, oh my yes, I never thought of it. That's amazing." I always make sure I write those down because I know if you ever get that reaction on something, that content's going to do well. And so that's the content that I try to invest more time into creating kind of lead magnets around, long form content around, content on every platform possible. But I got to put out enough content to find what those aha pieces are. So I put in a lot of content around that. But if I can get those moments in, and it's again, for me, that's a smaller list than the top two there, I figure them out. And the last one is just pain points and frustrations. So just during the process, what is a pain point for them? What's a frustration for them? If you sit down for each of these four and just write them all out, I'm going to brainstorm everything I can. That's a common question my niche would have. I'm going to write down all the questions they should ask, but don't know, all the aha moments, all the pain points and frustrations that they have. Anytime you want to create content that connects with them, you just go to the list, you look at it, then you look at, okay, now the platform that I'm going to post this on, how does that platform want me to serve content? So, like on Instagram right now, that typically means a reel. Now, you can go about reels differently, but you want to play it. Now, it's like on your website, maybe it's more of a blog post. YouTube, it's a longer form video. But when you're thinking like, okay, I know the topic that I'm going to do because I have this list, I'm going to pull it out. And now I'm going to serve it in the way the platform I'm putting it on wants me to do it. And that's how we create content. And often the easiest way is at the end of your thing, you can just give one of your offers. Like, let's say your ideal clients all wanted a house with a pool. That's like the number one thing they're asking for. Or maybe it was like a waterfront home, depending on where you are. You might do a video of like, here's the three things you need to look for when buying a waterfront home. One, two, three. And at the end, be like, by the way, if you want to get a list of waterfront homes, just DM me waterfront and I'll send you a list of excellent waterfront homes kind of up for sale in your area. And again, it's a really easy offer I can make them because I got their interest with the other stuff, content that connected with them, and then I made that offer in the back end. So again, that content is what got them to see that offer that I made, but I need to know what that offer is first because that can help me understand how I'm going to present this content so that it can help and make it a seamless flow into that offer that I have. And then we got those leads coming in consistently now. We got to get into the convert phase of this. So the first part, and this is where we always see like, how many people here have gotten leads and they're like, online leads are crap. That's like the general, like, or sometimes I say it more appropriately. I got some people putting up their hands. Great. This is a very, very common thing, right? Like a lot of people don't like it. And there's typically one main reason for that. Like if we look over here, this would be like your general public. You saw, I actually did a reel about this yesterday on Instagram if you saw it. And then this would be a client over here. So if you've built your business on referrals, you get them about here, right? And really what that means is your follow-up process just needs to go from here to here. That's the distance you need to take them. That typically is like a phone call, set an appointment, and you go. Now, if we took that back once, okay, not as good, but still pretty good is an open house lead. They're out, they're doing things. That follow-up process just needs to take them from here to here. If you do the same follow-up with an open house person as a referral person, you're missing this section here, but you maybe still be able to close that gap. But let's keep going. All right. So like here is a Google lead. Back here is a Facebook lead. Now, if we're looking at I've built my business here, and I'm now going to add in Facebook leads. If I'm using the follow-up process from here, I'm losing this whole section back here. I need to build that out or I'm going to lose them. Because the other way to look at this is I'm going to have no like trust. The referral, they already trust you. That follow-up's a lot easier. An open house, they've heard of you, they might like you because they got to spend some time with you. So your follow-up now needs to earn that trust to work with you long term. Google typically a little bit further, Facebook even further back on it. Right. So and you have to understand where on this are you capturing the lead? Like when you're getting those people to take up your offer, where along this process are they? If you don't know that, it's going to make your conversion a lot harder. Because essentially what we have here is this, the closer they are to here, the higher the intent of making a transaction. The closer they are to the other side, the lower their intent. So typically we see the higher intent, the more money too. It costs to get these leads. Like a referral is expensive. It's 25%. Facebook leads, not nearly as expensive. They can be like $1 or $2, but the really low intent. So you have to get them a lot further along the way. So again, knowing where a lead is before you start trying to convert it is a really important step. So this is just something to think about. When I'm bringing this lead in, what's the intent behind what the offer is they're taking, and where does that mean they are in the process right now? Like people typically don't go to an open house till they're a little bit further down the road. Right? Like, yeah, you always get some tire kickers, but most people are at least now kind of a little bit more seriously looking. But me seeing a Facebook ad pop up, that could be very early in. And when we're looking at conversion, the other way to think about it is over here on this side, if we're looking at the average buyer, is they're uncertain or certain? Just like to add certainty. So if you want to convert someone, your goal is to raise this side and lower this side. You need to make them as certain as possible that you're the right person for them. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. Like if you think of like the Proctor home sale guarantee, like a guarantee to sell your home, all that's trying to do is raise the level of certainty that this is someone who's going to get the job done for you. And that's not right for everyone. Not everyone wants to run like a guarantee in their business, but that's essentially what it's accomplishing is I'm raising the level of certainty and the level of uncertainty is like, okay, I know if a home doesn't sell, okay, I'm going to have someone there who could buy it. That's all we're trying to do is tip the scale in the favor of I'm willing to sign with you because I'm more certain that you're going to be able to help me. And for a lot of people, that can be done in different ways, but also where they are on here, like people who come in through like this area here, typically are already going to have a certain level of certainty that you're the right person because they're in that trust phase. Someone all the way back here, there is no trust yet. They don't even like you yet necessarily. So that's where like a guarantee would go a lot further over on this side because you're bringing them at that earlier stage in the process. The further on, you don't necessarily need that as much. So, just another thing to keep in mind as you're talking to leads. So, the first step is creating what we just call hand raisers. And the purpose of a hand raiser is again, just get someone to put up their hand and say, I'm not a lead, I'm a prospect. So in the kind of B2B sales world, there's something that we hear all the time called MQL, SQL. And all that stands for is a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead. A marketing qualified lead, all that means is someone put up their hand and said, I'm interested in this topic. We have no idea if they're going to transact anytime soon. We have no idea what their plans are. All we know is they said, okay, this is interesting. Like if a bunch of people opt into a What's My Home Worth campaign, we don't know that they're moving yet. We just know they wanted to know what their home is worth. That could be general curiosity. It could be to fight a tax bill. It could be they're going through a divorce. And it could be that they're selling. A sales qualified lead is this is someone who's moving and in that phase of the process for them, maybe it's not with you, but they are going to move. Typically, about 15% of the leads that you get could potentially be sales qualified leads. Everything else is typically more marketing qualified because they're not ready to transact yet. So when most people are like, oh, leads are crap, they're generating MQLs, but they're expecting the SQL. So we typically refer to this in real estate as a lead versus a prospect. Or other people might say a lead versus a quality lead. That's really all the difference is. The different in language, and again, knowing where you're bringing people on in the process. A hand raiser is things that go out to your MQLs to say, yes, I'm a prospect. Maybe now it's my situation has changed. Yes, I'm a prospect now. And the goal here is we want that to create a conversation with you. So, for example, if I had a listing coming up next week, and let's say it's a 4 bedroom home in the Glenway area near my house, and I want to say, great, this 4 bedroom home around the corner from me, it's coming up. I'm going to email everyone in my database who has shown interest in that type of area. And instead of saying, hey, here's my listing coming up, I'm instead going to say, hey, I got a 4 bedroom home coming up in this part of town. Would you like the details? Because what that means now is those who are interested are going to put up their hand and say, yes, can you please send those over to me? Same with if I have this list of buyers once in a while, and I might do this like 2, 3 times a year and just be like, hey, I'm creating this week a couple reports on what people's homes are worth, and I got about 5 extra slots available. Would you like me to tell you what your home would sell for if you were to list it for sale today? And people are going to reply and be like, yes, I would like to know. And it's like making it that simple for people of, I have this group of people over here. I'm just going to once in a while send them a simple email. And sometimes you kind of make it look at the season and be like, is there something I could do? Like right now with like tax season coming up, is there a way to kind of bring that into the conversation? And you want to look, okay, I know that this is what's going to be coming up, or what we'll often do in like late summer is send out an email and be like, hey, right now is an ideal time if you're going to consider selling before next summer to make sure you get photos of your home in summertime. So if you're going to sell over the winter, you can still show off summer photos. We have a photographer who's going around for a few clients next week to collect a couple of these outdoor shots. Just reply to this with your address if you want to be added to the list so that the photographer can swing by your house and get an outside shot for it. Simple way to get someone to put up their hand and identify where they are in the process. And again, it's because it's a short email or a text message or a DM on Instagram, it's a really easy way to get them, right? So we're looking at generally each year, you'd want to get this many of these messages in front of people on different platforms. It doesn't mean they're all going in the same platform, right? So like you're not necessarily going to send someone 20 emails a year with hand raisers, but maybe it's I'm going to send out 10 emails. I'm going to do 5 posts on Instagram. I'm going to do 3 stories. And it's just once in a while I'm putting up these things as my audience grows. I'm going to put up something that make the prospects put up their hand and identify themselves. Because I want to separate the MQLs from the SQLs. And the reason we look at like even this, like a hand raiser works on something like Instagram, is if you think about what someone, like an action someone takes to become a lead, it's just showing interest in real estate. Well, the act of following your account on Instagram is them showing an interest in real estate typically. Like, yes, there's a few exceptions, friends and family, things like that. But someone who takes the act of following someone on Instagram is putting up their hand that they're an MQL. This is a lead on someone who is interested in real estate. We don't know why yet. We just know that they're interested in the topic. And so we put out these hand raisers once in a while to have those following. Like this is where stories, it works really well because people have to follow you to see the stories. Is now they're going to respond to some of these sometimes, put up their hand and say, yes, I'm thinking of moving. Like if I put up one and like, hey, I got a listing coming up in this part of town, just hit reply to this story if you want the details. Or you could put up a poll in your stories and say, you got a listing coming in 2 days, north end of town, 4 bedrooms. Do you want me to send you the details when it's available? Yes, no. Everyone who says yes, that now they've put up their hand, they've raised it and said, I'm a prospect. Then you start the conversation with them. So we're using the platforms that we're on to create that ability to have conversations. So it's where can we strategically insert things into it that clearly says this is a prospect, not just a lead. We're going to create as many leads as we can and then have these little pieces. And what I always like when we first get a lead in is come list me style hand raisers, which is we want the people who are ready to go now to be able to very quickly identify themselves. How quickly can we get someone to put up their hand and say, no, I want to move? So like what's an offer that they couldn't refuse? Like sometimes we literally will just call it a Godfather offer of what's an offer someone who's thinking of moving could not refuse. And like we have seen everything from people just saying like, hey, if you book a call with me today, we'll stage your home, send out cleaners before it gets listed for sale, and get HD photos and video of your entire home done for you. And like, yeah, you might offer that already, but just by saying that right out the gate, you'll get a lot of people who will book that call with you. But it's like, what can I offer someone early on just to be like, yeah, no, let's go. I want to go. So we always look at in that first couple messages they get from you, are you making it easy for those ready to go soon to put up their hand and say, come list my house? And most people, it's like you don't have that right away. We want to add that in as much as possible. And then long-term nurture, typically, there's 2 ways that we do this, and it's mainly social and email. I think most people should send more emails. It's one of the highest ROI things. And what's nice about it Because so like the problem with like I love social media. Obviously, that's kind of what I've built a lot of my businesses on, but there's still problems with it. Like for me, social and emails, two of my best performing things, but email actually outperforms social for me. The problem is very simple, the algorithm. If you build your business on social, the algorithm controls when people see your content. If I do it on email, this doesn't matter because I'm choosing when that content gets in front of them now. I'm choosing how it's going to appear to them. I basically have to choose each part of that. The only thing I can't choose is when do they actually open that email when it hits on their phone. But that's what I'm a fan of. Like I would send out a weekly email. Typically, there's two types of emails we'll send. One is either news style, which is essentially act like a local newspaper. So, like if you get Just Sell Homes Tuesday email, that's kind of what I do, where it's like, here's what's going on, like stay up to date about marketing, some tips about it. So, if you're a realtor, it'd be like, here's what's going on in our community, here's what's happening in town this weekend, here's a real estate section, maybe here's something interesting. But it's one that, like, whether they moved into a new home yesterday and they're not going to move for 10 years or they're in the market, they're still going to find it valuable. So that's option one. And this works to send out to a lot of people every week. People don't get annoyed by it. Number two is the deal of the week. And it doesn't actually have to be like this is the best deal on the market. Is just a simple, I'm going to send you out a piece of property every week. Now, this works if you include one thing with it. Because if you just send out a listing, not that interesting in an email, but it's why did you pick this? Your insight as to why this is a good deal, why this is your favorite home, why this sold matters to them makes them believe that you're an expert. That matters so much. So we always look at if I'm going to send out real estate related content like best deal on the market, my favorite loft, coolest waterfront properties this week, whatever it is, it has to include your reasoning, your insight, stuff from you that sets you apart as an expert here. Because most people aren't going to see this email like, yep, I'm going to buy it. But it's going to train them that, like, okay, you're an expert that's worth listening to on this. So that when I'm ready to go, that's who I want doing that for me. And then presentations that convert. Again, this is going to be a little bit different for everyone, right? Like I was mentioning earlier, if you have a listing presentation, we actually on the show I do every Thursday with Taylor Hack, we recently had one of the top agents in California come on, Andy C, and we talked about this with him. He does about 300 plus deals a year in like Palo Alto area, I believe it was. When he goes on a listing appointment, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes. He's even done listing appointments over FaceTime, getting the signature on multi-million dollar homes because when he comes through, they already know he's the expert. Now, when he sends a team member that's not him, there it's about a 90-minute process for them. But you just have to keep testing it and figuring out for you. Like a lot of it's just asking the right questions, understanding their situation, making them believe that you understand where they are and that you can help them. And how everyone's going to accomplish that, it's going to be a little bit different. And there's a lot of really great resources for doing these. And just this one, by the way, here for the deal of the week, like I mentioned, can be a lot of different styles. It could be just sold properties. It could be new listings that you're doing. It could be here's the best listings that have been on the market for 30 plus days. It's what would your niche find interesting to get every week? It could be solds in a neighborhood. There's a lot of different approaches. It just has to be something that you know your niche would like to get every week that's real estate related. And then you should include your insight into it. And sometimes it's as simple as test different styles and see what they want. Now, once you got them now, they're clients, we get into the engage phase. So when we're looking at a lifetime client program, I like people to shift their mindset a little on how you look at it. Like if you want someone to come and be a client with you for life, think of your commission not as the cost just to like sell that home, it's their fee to join your lifetime client program. So if we know the average person moves every 5 to 7 years, then what we want to look at is like just for making the math easier, if your commission on a property was 25,000, they move every 5 years. Then we know this will also be a really embarrassing time to get math wrong. Um, roughly that 5,000 a year is the value that they should get for being part of your clients. I don't mean like you're giving them $5,000 worth of stuff, but if like let's say for example on that you could give them something that had more value. But what I mean by this is now every year are they getting things that are worth at least 5,000 a year? And again, where you are, the market you're in, commission in what you're charging and home prices and all that, these numbers can change a lot, right? But this is how I want you to think about it. Like, can I give them at least 500 a year in value by being part of my lifetime client program? Because now they're never going to want to leave, but that can go up a lot higher again, depending on who your ideal clients are. So first thing you have to do though is five-star service. Um, and we use a really simple concept here, which is just we call them elevators. So let's say we get a client in, so they sign the contract, sign contract, and then when we do that, we notify the photographer. Then we get the stagers to come in. And then we take the photos. And then basically you want to write down each step along the way. What an elevator is be like, okay, here, what can I do this just to make it a little bit better? And then at this stage, what can I do to make this service a little bit better? And that's all you're doing. Like this doesn't have to be something where you're like doing massive improvements all the time. You just want to look at each touch point along the way. How can I just make this a little bit better? Do you like do a really quick, especially if you're kind of newer in the industry or you're not as confident about it? Just ask yourself, who in my market do I think gives the best service? Like if you're not confident that it's you, because like this will also help you convert more leads. If you're confident you offer the best service in town, because now you're gonna look at it like, okay, they need to work with me because I'm the best one for them. If you don't believe that, you got to get there. And how we do that is okay, then who is that person who provides better service than me? Write out what they're doing and be like, okay, how can I make mine better? Like where along this? And again, all sometimes it takes is just doing a little bit better. But as long as your experience is better than what they're getting elsewhere, you are the best choice and it's going to give you more confidence when you go to close people. So this is how we do it. We really simply, like you can actually even see it here on my wall behind me, and this is just a coincidence that it's up there, to be honest, is this was actually me mapping out someone's process. And then and this is what some of the colors signify here is like how could we make it better. So like for us it was like the blue is the actually what their process was, and then the red is how can we make it a little bit better along the way. So where can we insert something into the process that's going to make it a better experience. And if you just keep doing that and documenting it, writing down the process, you're going to have this fully optimized system that's going to be better than anything else that's out there for them. And then there's loyalty events. And typically there's a few ways to go about this. So we like to do one for each quarter in terms of like in-person stuff, because I think in-person does matter a lot for things like this. So we look at Q1 to Q4. And we typically look at 4 events. So we do one big one, and this could be like where you try to get everybody together. And this could be running out a skating rink. It could be movie theater, different things like that. If you're kind of newer and your database isn't as big, you don't have to start big. A big could just be go out for dinner with 5 people. Again, it depends on where you are in your business. Like if you know Cindy and Craig in the Durham region who own Cindy and Craig Real Estate, like their movie night in the park is like 1,800 people. You don't like that takes a while to get to. So you do one bigger. Then we do like I like to do another one that's just with a photographer. And what I do with this one is just like go to a park, photographer, and let all your clients know that in the spring or in the summer, they can just come and get new family photos or new a photo with their pet or like an updated headshot for the work even. But every year they know they're going to get an updated photo from a professional photographer from you. And then we try to go again, this is going to depend a little bit on who your niche is. is one more like adult style event that maybe doesn't have kids at it. And this could be like, hey, we're gonna host the trivia night in this bar, or we're gonna try this new brewery that just opened. I'm gonna get the first round, or I'm gonna get the appetizers. But something that's maybe not as a kid type of event that gets people out and socializing. Again, knowing who your ideal clients are really matters. Like if your ideal clients are not people who drink, you don't want to do it at a brewery. If they love drinking, brewery's great. We've had clients who do them at art galleries. There's a million ways you can go with that, but just think of I want one where it's just getting adults together and socializing and helping them create community and find community within each other. And then we actually typically go back to the photographer where we do a more holiday themed event. So like an easy one that I would have done back then, back when I was selling, would be like I'd rent a Santa, rent a photographer, be like skip the line at the mall. I've rented a Santa, come get some time with Santa this day, this time. And I'd let them come in. So that would be kind of the in-person events I would do. And the nice thing with these is each of these gets at least 4 touch points. So right there, you get 16 touch points a year with your database without being annoying because you have an invite, a reminder, the event itself, and the follow-up thank you. Then you start adding like I'm going to be posting about this some of this on social. You can easily get that up to like 30, 40 touch points without them being annoying, and it keeps you top of mind. The other way we look at these loyalty events is virtual events, and most agents don't do these. And going back to like tax season's coming up, what if you went to your accountant and said, I want to host a Zoom for all my clients who are local just to get their tax questions answered? Could you do a 20-minute presentation on like what are the most important things to know this year? And then we open it up for Q&A. And you just go to your whole database and be like, hey, my accountant's agreed to do a, you know, Tuesday at 7 o'clock, a 60-minute Zoom. You're free to attend. You can ask questions or just listen. He's going to do about 20 minutes on what's important this year to pay attention to with your taxes, and then he's going to open it up for questions. The reason I like that 20 minutes first before you open it for questions is that gives you content for social. You can take it, add it on social. If you don't have that, then it's just purely private. But doing something like that is you can add those throughout the year. And like personally, if I went back, I would do it monthly. I'd have interior designers on, I'd have architects, I'd have contractors. I'd look at like who would help them and be of value. And if I'm working with like say like parents, like young parents all the time, maybe I'm bringing in a parenting expert. Not all of them are going to be interested, but some might be. But I'm looking at because I have this group of people, how can I get other people who would they'd want to hear from to come and talk to them? And for these people, the value is I'm going to almost get to present my skills in front of a large group of potential clients. And they're going to feel safe coming on and having that questions. So these types of things really effective for creating that loyalty. And the last one is VIP content. So it's things that they're going to get they can't get anywhere else. And it's like it's just a bonus of being with you. So like one that we look at here, which is really popular, is just an annual CMA. And you can actually do this with more frequency, but annual is good. It's like every year on the anniversary of their home purchase, you tell them what their home is worth now, right? And especially with like the home price index that goes out, that's a really easy one to do. It'd be like, because it can break down, in the last 12 months, this type of home in this neighborhood has gone up X percent. You'd be like, hey, you bought at this price, home prices are up 2.3%. That means your home price is up 2.3, which is X amount of money. So we always put it in dollar figures. Like we'll say like it's up 2.3%, which means your home's now worth this much more or this much less. And then we just add in like what you could do with that. Like the home's gone up, you could be like, here are your options. Like we always make the first one, you can keep paying it down. And then the hand raiser we'll often put in that is like, by the way, if you've done anything to raise or lower the value of your home and you're thinking of selling, let me know. I'm happy to tell you what your home would be worth now. So again, it's just adding in these little pieces that they're going to get that no one else is. So again, very simple thing to do, but look at like what could I give them? And like the other one could be like your preferred suppliers. Like we worked with one who was going to go around town and he's going to go find a bunch of businesses to give him like 5% discount codes and offer to all his clients. But at the same time, we'd all just be like, here's a contractor I trust. Here's a lawn guy I trust. That list of like vetted people that they can use has a lot of value. There was a client, for example, This was years ago. Sorry, it wasn't actually a client. It was someone we met at a conference over drinks in the lobby bar. Um, they hired an in-house handyman. Now, again, they did a lot of business, so they could afford it. But every client for 1 day a year could have the handyman come to their house and work on stuff. Like they'd have to buy whatever the supplies are if they needed them, but they knew every year for 1 day they could book a handyman to come into their house and just fix stuff up. The rest of the time he was getting listings ready or go to the team leader's house and work on it. But every client knew that because they were a past client, 1 day a year they could bring the handyman in. It's a huge bonus to a lot of people. So this is how you get listings on demand, like we talked about. It's about attracting the right people, making some clear offers through your content that connects with them, getting those hand raisers out there, those who aren't ready to do the long-term nurture, and then having these presentations that help convert once you get them in person, creating obviously that 5-star service with loyalty events and VIP content. If you can nail all 9 of these, and again, how you do them on different platforms, the mechanics might slightly change, but you want to make sure you have each of these in place. And if you find that you're not able to, if you consistently do your marketing, it's not pulling these out, something here is not done and set up the right way. And that's what you got to do, is look at, where are the gaps in my business? I hope you found that valuable. So here's how this is going to work. We're going to keep this pretty simple. If you want to get our help to implement any of this, parts of it, all of it, from either a training perspective or a done for you perspective, book a call. We're going to put the links below, and you can also go to this link that you're seeing right here on the screen. And that will bring you to a Calendly where you can book a call with our team, and we'll talk to you and see if we can actually help you. So basically the first call is kind of a 15-20 minute call roughly, and we'll kind of evaluate where you are and then see if it's a good fit. If it is for both of us, then we'll kind of show you what that can look like. If it's not, we'll kind of point you in the right direction and go from there. But I appreciate you taking your time spending it with us today, and book a call if you want to see if it's a good fit for us working together.